Today, we're going to break down the top 20 struggles of men. Now, these questions have been gathered from my current clients, my past clients, or my followers. I'm a men's transformation coach. I help men transform their physical, mental, and spiritual lives and really operate at their highest capacity. Now, we'll be breaking down this video into a spiritual, a physical, and a mental section, and we'll get straight into the mental first, or spiritual first. So one of the first questions, and this is probably my most asked question, is why do I feel so far from God when I'm the one who walked away? And there's one thing I really like about this message is that they understand that they're the one who walked away. See, I think a lot of the times we blame God for our issues. We blame God for the distance we feel. However, He doesn't really go anywhere. The same person who walked out, who walked away from God, is the same person who's capable of walking back in line with God. It truly is a choice. A lot of men fall out of touch with God because they simply just stop praying. They stop reading a singular page of Bible a day. God doesn't really ask for much. He asks for faith. And the way that we communicate with God is through prayer. God doesn't need you to pray, but He's left praying there for you to get close to Him, to build a relationship with Him. God craves a relationship with you. Now, this one I get asked a lot from either non-believers or people that are really struggling with their faith is, how do I pray when I don't even know if there's someone listening to me? Well, I think it's really important to understand what faith is. Faith isn't like this proof that God is there. See, like with Christianity, I'm a Christian. Majority of my followers are believers. Now, with Christians, yes, we have actual archaeological proof. We have, certain things we look for in order to prove our faith. However, at the end of the day, you cannot sit there with 110% certainty and say what happens with God. However, we have faith that there is a God. We have faith that Christ died for us on the cross. We have faith that His sacrifice was enough for us to make it into heaven. We don't have certainty, but we have faith. So one of the best ways to start building that relationship with God, to get more comfortable with prayer, I think is saying the Lord's Prayer at least 3 times before you actually start praying. Have you ever had those bad thoughts when you're praying? When I say the Lord's Prayer 3 times before I start praying, it completely goes away. Just show up constantly, say the Lord's Prayer once, twice, 3 times before you actually start praying. And I'd urge you to just spend 1 session of prayer thanking God instead of asking God for something. Just thank Him. Just thank God for the breath in your lungs. Just thank God for working hands, fingers, eyes. See, these things, we take them for granted. But truly, it's a miracle that I'm able to talk to you through a camera, which then gets uploaded to YouTube, which then you're able to listen to me and understand just even the entire concept of language is still so foreign to us. So these things, we should be thanking God, even for these little things. I get this one a lot. How do I stop doing the things that I tell myself I'll stop instead of just feeling guilty? Christians are scared of guilt, are scared of shame, and they're scared of feeling it. I see a lot of modern day Christians say, oh no, you're not supposed to feel shame. You're not supposed to, feel any guilt. Well, one, that's just straight up unbiblical. It's not to say that God shames you. However, if you don't feel any shame for your actions, you have no actual reason to repent. Shame, guilt, it leads us to go to God. I think one thing that's also worth mentioning is that we forget that God's grace is infinite. It doesn't run out. And that's a really hard concept to grasp. So it doesn't matter how many times you mess up, God will still forgive you. However, it's up to you to reach out to God for that. You gotta row the boat in order for God to steer. And now I get asked this a lot from the older men I work with is, how do I actually lead my family spiritually when I'm struggling with my faith alone? There's two answers to this question. The really harsh answer, and something that is very difficult for a lot of men to understand, is the concept of being equally yoked. Paul talks about it. If you are not equally yoked with your partner, you cannot lead. If you imagine a yoke is what they attach to cows or bisons, and that's to basically walk them. It's like a leash for cows. If these two are not walking at an equal pace, if they're not equally yoked, well, they're just going to spin. Imagine one is walking at 1 mile per hour and the other is walking at 2. Well, what's going to happen? It's just going to spin. You're just going to keep going in circles, right? That's why the concept of being equally yoked with your partner is so important. So there's one aspect of, are you completely new to your faith and you are trying to date some girl that is multiple years into Christianity, she's, great with God, whatever. Well, the first advice I'll give you is don't get into that relationship. You are not equally yoked. Can't lead her. That relationship is bound to fail. There's a completely different situation where one partner, where they're married, falls out of their faith. Your marriage saves you. You don't have to break up with your partner. But a lot of the characteristics of being a leader is the ability to be honest. So I would urge you to be honest with your partner that you are struggling with your faith, but then reassure them that you are actively seeking out God, that you are actively reaching out to God. A man being a leader of the household, of the relationship, doesn't mean that he always has to be the strong one. I need you to wash away and wipe from your mind this modern concept of masculinity, because it's not what it is. I think one of the most masculine actions a man can have is to be honest about their struggles, is to actually be able to voice that. Once you're honest with your wife, once you're honest with your partner, then you go to God and you ask God to transform you. You ask God to work in you. You ask God to help you with your faith. See, this is why we think of relationships as a triangle, with God being at the top and both of the partners being, at the bottom. That's the only thing it works. A relationship only works when God is at the very top, the very center. Now, another question I get asked is from a lot of non-believers, but is it too late after everything I've done? Well, no. That's the entire point of Jesus' sacrifice. We even see, some of his apostles used to be murderers, I believe Paul used to murder Christians. What matters is you were never too far from God. You're never too far gone. It's impossible to be too far from God's grace. His grace is everlasting, man. You just got to accept it. Doubt is the enemy, and the devil does a great job at putting doubt into men's hearts. But that's what we have Christ for. That's what we have the sacrifice for, is that the battle's already won. All you need is faith. So as long as you believe that that sacrifice was enough, then you don't have to work for it. That's it. Now, a lot of men, and this question leads into it, but a lot of men feel empty. But this question says, why does everyone have peace and I feel empty? There's peace from God. A lot of people think that feeling peace means we won't have any chaos in our lives. Yes, God is not the author of chaos, but I think we forget that we live in the world. We have faith that God restores, that God heals, that God takes care of us. Yes, we're still human. We still feel those emotions. We still feel stress. So it's important to realize that just because you're not peaceful all the time doesn't mean you are just far from God. Let's go into segue into the physical section. And this is, my bread and butter. I'm mainly a fitness coach. One of the first questions and one of the most often asked questions is, well, why do I fail every single diet I start? The problem is you're looking for a diet. So a lot of people will build out their nutrition based on forcing themselves and thinking if they have some bland chicken and rice and whatever, and they force themselves to have it, they will make more gains or, have better results. That's just entirely untrue. Honestly, a lot of people don't necessarily need more discipline. A lot of people just need a plan that's adjustable and is flexible. Not all of you are fitness influencers. Not all of you are making money from social media. Not all of you make money from your phone. A lot of us people have 9-to-5 jobs. A lot of people have to show up somewhere physically. They don't have time to live like a fitness influencer. So a plan like that doesn't work for you. Now, this is something that I used to ask myself a lot. And this came from one of my clients all the time. He would ask all the time, especially as we started to change. He's also around 160 pounds now, but he kept asking me, how did I even get to this point? How did I allow myself to get to this point? And I feel like a lot of people ask that, but then they never actually make a conscious change to better their life. I think a lot of people don't understand that weight gain it doesn't happen like that. Weight gain is something that happens over a very long period of time. It's you made bad decisions thousands of times, which is what leads to someone being 100 pounds overweight. That's where I landed. It was years and years and years of bad decisions. However, just noticing it is how you make that change. You notice that you are not where you want to be. Now it's up to you to make a conscious change. Now the time question, the good old time question, this one came from a poll, is I don't have time to work out or cook. And I'm going to say something. Everyone has time. But a lot of people don't understand that they can shrink time. And what I mean by that is you can shrink the task so it fits in the time that you have. That means if you can only have one simple meal that takes you 5 minutes and that's the only thing you can have, then so be it. Then you rely on that meal. And if you mess up, but you just go back. See, that all or nothing mindset is I either have 4 hours or I have no hours. I either have chicken, rice, and broccoli every meal or I pig out. That is what keeps people back. That is actually one of the biggest contributors to why America is so fat. Now this is something I really struggle with, is like this chronic fatigue. A lot of people feel very tired and exhausted even when they sleep for hours on hours on hours. Now, a lot of you feeling tired has to do with your lifestyle rather than just your sleep. I'd like you to look at your eating habits and how active you are. That alone will tell you where your energy levels should be. Now, another question that I get asked is, how do I stop eating my feelings when food seems to be the only thing that helps? I don't think a lot of people understand that just makes complete sense why food would be the thing you reach out for. It feels really good, it spikes your dopamine, and it doesn't feel like there's ever any judgment. The problem is, much like taking out a loan, you got to pay that interest after. And that hurts. And you pay that interest with how you feel. I want you to think back to every single time you eat your feelings away. When has it ever felt good afterwards? When have you not beat yourself up about it? I would confidently say majority of people who rely on eating their feelings away have a good 20 to 30 minutes, up to an hour or 2 hours, where they just constantly poop on themselves for falling away from the diet. So if you struggle with eating your feelings away, you don't necessarily beat it by banning the food that you eat or cutting it out completely. You build other habits that soothe you the same way food does. So for a lot of people, that might be drawing. That might be playing an instrument. That might be reading their Bible. That might be going for a walk. These habits will help you overcome emotional eating. And I get this a lot when it comes to physical stuff is, well, can I still turn this around at my age? Yeah. I mean, I've had men come to me and they're 60 and morbidly obese. I'm speaking 350 to 400 pounds and they turn their life around. It's honestly never too late to make a change physically. You can allow yourself to get to a point where your mind doesn't allow you to change anymore. And that's where it becomes dangerous. So as long as you don't give up on yourself, the concept of change will always be available to you. You just need to actually want change. And that leads us into the mental section. Mentally, from the outside, you can seem like you have everything fine and you have everything down to a T. But like this guy asked, why do I feel like I'm failing when everything looks fine from the outside? And the thing is, outside, your appearance, the mask that you put on for other people, doesn't actually measure the stuff that matter to you. So you can hit every external marker and still feel hollow. The problem is you are not living the life you are meant to be living. You are living out of line with who you are actually supposed to be. It's up to you to clear that gap. And that gap gets cleared by prioritizing your physical, mental, and your spiritual health all at once. Now, moving on to the next question. This is something I used to do a lot, is a lot of men hide their feelings. And I mean, it's just we think it's the masculine thing to do. But how do you as a man actually stop pretending that you're okay? Well, I would urge you to tell one person the truth. I would urge you to just reach out to one person. And it's going to feel uncomfortable because as men, we've been taught to not feel. We've been taught to not express how we feel. What if I told you that is directly against what God wants you to do? What if I told you that directly goes against your biology? What if I told you that directly goes against how your brain operates? The problem is your burdens are not meant to be your burdens alone. This is why we have community. This is why we're actually called to have wives. This is why we have parents. These people are supposed to help us bear these responsibilities, bear these burdens, so that we're not alone. Because life alone is tough. It is. It's hard. It is hard to be alone. While I think being alone is important, being able to be by yourself and with God is important, you should not be chronically alone. For a phase, it's fine. If you are focusing on making more money, if you're focusing on building certain habits, if you're focusing on becoming a better man, yes, but only for a certain period of time. So if I'm supposed to talk to people, who do I talk to and how without actually feeling weak? Well, one, I congratulate you on asking these questions because that's important. I want you to ask yourself, what's wrong with being a little weak? What's wrong with having a moment of weakness if it'll lead to you being stronger in the future? There's nothing wrong with that. So I'd urge you to reach out to a priest, a trusted friend, a counselor, a coach, a mentor. Asking for help is the greatest act of strength that you can have as a man. I believe Jesus Christ is the most masculine man that ever existed. Even he asked for help when it came to spreading the gospel. A lot of men ask me this on our one-on-one calls. A lot of men just struggle to recognize a person that they've become. So why don't you recognize a person you've become? Well, I would say that you've spent years making small, very minuscule compromises to yourself. Skip the gym here, watch TV there, settle for a relationship here, let my wife disrespect me here. And these years of small compromises, that buries the man that you're supposed to be. But the good news is that man is not gone. The good news is that you don't actually find the guy you're supposed to be by hating the person you are now, but you hate your situation enough to take action that the man that is the more successful version of you would take. This question is something that I really struggled with. It's because I struggled with feeling. I was asked, how do I stop numbing out the pain every night just to push through? Now, I had to cut out what they were numbing out with. The weed, the alcohol, the drugs, the nicotine, that is not your main problem. Your main problem is what you're using these substances for. And I would urge you to sit there sober and just pull one thread at a time. I would urge you to meditate on your current life, on the reason why you feel the need to use these drugs. And I would urge you to remind yourself that it's okay to feel. And then I would encourage you to reach out for help. It's not a sign that you're a weak man if you reach out for help. It's actually a sign that you are strong. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to community. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to a friend, with reaching out to a mentor, with reaching out to a coach. You are not weak for doing that. You're strong for recognizing that that's needed. Now, a lot of men, they used to be disciplined. They used to have the drive. And I get asked this a lot is, well, how how can I instill that back into myself? How can I want it like I used to? Well, the problem is that you are relying on motivation. The problem is that you are relying on feeling something. You're relying on something happening to get you to move. But the answer is movement. The answer is doing one hard thing on purpose, consistently, regardless of how it feels. Motivation will come as a reward for the action you did while you were unmotivated. Employ the KISS method into your life. Keep it simple, stupid. And if you start with something so stupidly small, like washing the dishes right after you place them into the sink, like making your bed right after you get out, you then let the momentum from that one positive task carry you into the next. And last question, and this is possibly one of the most asked questions, and it's something that you genuinely have to answer for yourself. So maybe I'll just leave the video with that. Why should I change today? Why should I start improving today? And I will leave you to answer that question yourself.